Hi everyone, my name is Anne-Marie Band and today is June the 3rd and this is the Moneyball Morning Report for the Benzinga Pro platform. We have another mixed bag today. Like we did yesterday, we've got a trend of the moving average down to flat but prices above it. We have our zigzag giving us negative pressure. And our momentum is slightly bullish. So if you're using easy for me to say, if you're using a momentum indicator to trade the first candlestick that gives us positive formation and we're above the VWAP and we're above that moving average, it tells us there's a long action event into resistance. Now, what is the overall trend? We have the zigzag being down, we have the moving average being down to flat, but moving averages are providing support instead of resistance. Price compression is fairly tight according to the futures. The ranges of yesterday were much wider than the ranges of today. Not sure what that means, but I saw it across the board. So what do we look for? Long action events opening at the bottom of the opening range. That works for us at this juncture, and that number is about 59.40. We want to close a candlestick above the low of this opening range, and we are dancing with it right now. So we need another candlestick to tell us that there's continuation there. If you went long using the momentum indicator and the confirmation of support being provided by your moving averages, you have a position on, and that would mean that you would want to take a little bit of profit. Support remains below at the high of this high volume candlestick from yesterday. Notice the price action pierces it, is held by the moving average, and we recover. And so if you're looking at, hey, this was a positive candlestick formation, I have the moving average underneath me as support, the first candlestick close above that line gives you a long action event, but your stop would be, the stop I would use would be the next big bullish candlestick formation here on the hourly. So this is what we are staring down potentially as new support on the day. The low of this candle at 59.07 provides the ultimate low support at the day, but the measured move is 59.17 to the downside. It's up here at 59.84 to the upside, and so we can see what's going on. Could you take this trade right now as a long? The answer is yes, and you could make your stop a wee bit tighter, I suppose, inside of the first candlestick that completes over the close of the VWAP. So the long there would be into 59.51. And then there's the wick of yesterday, that's the high. So that wick is 59.55. Let's take a look at the NQ. All right, let's broaden this out so we can see what's going on. We have the opening range that is about 60 points wide. That's close to the average. We're well inside it. What does slope tell us? Well, the VWAP is a little bit down to flat. The big moving average is down to flat. Momentum has turned bullish. It was flat here at the close. So again, it triggers a long into the opening range space, but we are bounded by this large selling candlestick from May the 29th. So that's the candle that we are looking at. Is there a pullback equal a buy zone around here? Yes, I would suspect that it's around the swing low, swing high half point at 21,265. You could also take the long at 21,518, but the risk would be fairly wide here since we have a cross current of the zigzag being down and the bigger moving average being down and the VWAP being down. That tells us that we are really running into resistance and we need a retest before price action opens up. Expected move to the downside, 21,405. Expected move to the upside, 21,704. A little bit of a cross current for sure, but if we want to look at where buying power has been coming from, it always comes from underneath, right? That's how we know we've got buying pressure. It comes from underneath, and then we continue to make higher highs. And that is what we are seeing. So pullbacks are buy zones for both the ES and the NQ. Let's take a look at the YM. Wow. That's because of that crazy indicator formation we've got going on there. Fairly tight opening range. What did we do? We bounced off of the high of the last hourly candlestick that showed significant volume, but again, notice we compressed right into it. So the question might be, why is that going on? And we can see that there's also this nasty formation. And I say it's nasty because the price action is actually retracing itself. So that's what gives us the problem. We do have a line at 42,100. That presents ultimate support for me today. So that would be the low. What is trend? Well, notice how fat the zigzag is. It tells us that price action's retracing each other and pretty wide. We had a megaphone pattern yesterday in the YM, and we also had a megaphone pattern on Friday. That really does tend to give us these big sideways patches that we are staring down. Now, what's the trade? We have support on flat-ish moving averages. We do have positive momentum. And so this candlestick that opens above the VWAP really gives us the best power space that we're sitting in. And so the target would be the low of the opening range, and that is 21,316. The high of the opening range is 42,378. I think I just said 22,318, but you know I meant 42,318. What's the trade today? Well, to me, in the YM, this clearly looks like deep bounces, finding buyers, and so I would not be surprised if we came back in to that 42,100, let it break down, and when it recovers, you can take the trade. Right now, there is a long in play, as I mentioned, into that 42,316. A little bit messy. Higher highs expected, but lows not out of the question. The high target today is still 42,400, and the low target, as I mentioned, 42,104. Implied volatility numbers are hard for this one, so we don't have them listed into the end of the month. But the last week of June, we ought to be able to see it fairly nicely. All right, let's take a look at micro Bitcoin. Now, I was pretty bearish on micro Bitcoin yesterday, and it worked out fairly fine, right? Low edge of today's expected move, 104,180. High of the expected move on the day, 100,854, and we already broke that. Very wide opening range today, as yesterday, about 1,000 points wide. And now we're caught right in the middle of the range. What is trend? Zigzag is down, moving average is down, VWAP is down, but there's a little bit of a fight club here. As we stare down the formations, we can see that they're dancing inside of the large candlestick from May 30th and even more inside of the large candlestick on May 29th. So Are pullbacks buy zones? Yes, but the pullbacks are deep. 104,377, and yesterday's closing VWAP is 105,031. So if this chart is recovering, I'm not sure that it is, but if it is recovering, that 105,000 area gives us a nice buy. In hindsight, you could have bought the low of the opening range with the target at the high of the opening range, but that's a fairly low probability event. What we want to see is positive momentum, that's barely positive, with a candlestick close over the VWAP. The VWAP is way up here. So you could use this moving average below to give yourself a support zone and maybe 400 points of risk. Okay, so that's what we're staring down there. Very big mishmash. I would wait for the edges to perform price action events on micro Bitcoin. It is trying to trend higher. The next line in the sand would be somewhere around resistance here. Wow, it just got tighter as we spoke. The high end just around resistance here at about 107,500. Now, that being said, it could expand. We know Bitcoin can make some very, very big moves. Ideally, I don't want to trade this unless it's below the bottom, at the low of the range and recovers, or at the failed test of the VWAP that pushes us back down outside of the range. And that edge range low is 105,500. Let's take a look at oil. Oil is still quite bullish. Formations are really tight, so dips are buy zones. Let's use the combination of momentum and trend. We are very much above a slightly upward moving average. We are above the VWAP, and we just broke above the high of the opening range candlestick formation, which is right there. Yeah. There we go. So, is this potentially a long? Yes, right? We had a very bearish candlestick yesterday. It's now recovering. So my thought would be it's going to try and get to the top of this, but if we draw Fibonacci, you can see that it's battling at that 50% area, right? And so I don't want that fib there. I just want you to see that it's battling at the 50% zone here in this range. Could you take a short? Yeah, but it'd be very counter trend. The slight pullback into 62.96, the low of that opening range, is what I would think would be a good long. The expected move to the downside was already touched in the early part of the morning. That's 62.44. The expected move to the upside takes us just shy of the high of this bearish candlestick, and that is 63.77. There are some ticks above that, but I really don't think that we catch that much of that move. I would take profit at that $63.77, $63.80, and then, either raise your stop or leave your stop where it is and ride to see if it can get to 64. Let's take a look at gold. Gold has been pulling back into its support zones and then immediately running right back up. In the overnight, I'm going to change this. I'm going to remove this fib, and let's use swing low, swing high, swing low, swing high for this last wave, and see where the 50% marker is. That's down there at 33.42. Look at the expected ranges here, though, right? What is trend? Zigzag says up, moving average says up, VWAP says down. Okay, so we got a cross current here. Momentum is down, but it's waning. So traders are trying to find support. We broke through the low of the opening range and then under the VWAP, which opened up that short event to the base of the most bullish candlestick of yesterday. That's going to be the one that's going to be support. If per happenstance, we are down at the weekly implied vol move. That's the red dashed line. And so that tells us price action, traders are going to try and bounce off of this zone. It still looks bearish until we can close above that VWAP and our momentum turns long. Now, you could do it on a tighter time frame. VWAP will stay the same, but the momentum might shift, give you a quicker edge. Not a bad idea to take a long here, but notice some longs have been attempted over the last 7 or 8 hours, and we still keep making lower highs. So be very careful here. If we cannot get above $3,388, price action will rotate down. Expected move to the upside, 34.24. We are below the expected move to the downside, which is 33.88. All right, let's go to SPY. Candlestick in motion, yesterday's high candlestick. We are right in the midst of it. It's not a particularly, it's not a particularly potent bullish candle. That candle is the one we just got out of. So pullbacks look like buy zones here. Momentum is still negative, not very expanded, but negative. And so we want to get a closing candle up over this VWAP. Notice we came into the opening range. As soon as we popped out of that opening range, based on this formation, the goal would be the trade long to test the VWAP. And we are already breaching the VWAP. And so the expected move up above at 593.28 is what I'm looking at. Here's the wick for a higher price at around 594 and some change. All right, low end of the range. Expected move 586. Trend mixed but holding upward. All the volume candlesticks of size for the last few days have been bullish, right? This candlestick is bullish, yes, but the volume's not even as big as the candlestick here. We probably ought to keep our eyeballs on this one. And of course, if you are trading any instrument, all of this will work, right? Whether you're looking at whatever that you're looking at. Okay, so pullbacks or buy zones, overall bullish. I, again, would like to wait for the dips to make the trade long. You can see we've got a little bit of a flag pattern going here. And so as we get to the top of these ranges here near the expected move, I would consider closing a long or preparing for a short. Let's take a look at the Qs finally. The QQQ. Look at how compressed these ranges have gotten. It's very interesting. This one is still a little bit wider than the SPY range, but we're looking at formations that here is the largest bullish candlestick. I'm just going to draw a line on that one because, again, not huge, but we did hold a support. And that's pretty interesting right there. $520.38 is the support we can look at today. The bounce up into the expected move above 524.68 to 525, and then below us 517 to yesterday's closing VWAP, day before yesterday. So that's Friday's closing VWAP, which is about 517. All right, overall, we're still in buy the dip mode. Price action is a bit messy for most of the charts, so wait for your levels. Wait for them, watch them confirm before you take the trade, and you'll be in good shape. Less is more. You'll be able to go farther in terms of your portfolio balance if you just wait for the trade that works for you. All right, everyone, take care, and I'll see you on the streams.